Between 2015 and 2026, I mean, millions of people literally walked away from standard science to ask this really dangerous question about the shape of the Earth.
Right, yeah.
But the wild thing is they didn't know they weren't building this, like, organic rebellion. They were actually walking straight into a digital casino that was, perfectly engineered to trap them.
Oh, perfectly engineered. It was
Yeah.
designed to drain their wallets and just ensure they never actually looked up at the sky.
Exactly. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we are opening up this massive, truly unprecedented 10-year forensic audit.
It's a massive stack of documents.
It really is.
Mm.
And the documents in front of us today, they cover this highly stigmatized, wildly controversial, and rapidly growing digital ecosystem from the last decade.
Which is, of course, the alternative cosmology movement.
Right, or what almost everyone just calls, flat Earth.
But before we go a single step further, I think we need to draw a very hard line for you, the listener.
Yes, absolutely.
This deep dive is absolutely not about taking a side on the physical shape of the Earth. I mean, we are strictly unpacking a provided stack of forensic documents, network audits, and operational dossier.
Yeah, we are holding strictly to that. We aren't here to argue about, the ground under your feet.
Exactly. The goal here is impartial analysis of the network mechanics, not a cosmological debate.
Right. The mission of this deep dive is to analyze the architecture of narrative control. Like, how does a movement get managed?
And what the dossier reveals is basically a blueprint for social engineering.
We're looking at a literal masterclass in how a decentralized, organic, highly skeptical online movement was just systematically corralled.
Corralled, monetized, and neutralized by network gatekeepers. We're examining how genuine, albeit, unorthodox technical inquiry was intercepted.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because our sources today are really dense.
Very dense. The sources map out this multi-year progression from 2015 all the way to 2026.
We have a comprehensive forensic network audit mapping the major players.
Right, detailing how early organic growth was transitioned into engineered media traps.
We also have these highly technical case studies on optical boundary physics.
And managed debate loops. And controlled experimental failures that were designed for just maximum community demoralization.
Plus, we have this hard-locked chronological timeline of the engineered media traps. So if you are listening to this right now and thinking, like, why do I care about flat Earth internet drama?
Yeah, you really need to reframe this entirely. This audit is about your daily digital life.
Exactly. This isn't just about cosmology.
It reveals the exact structural mechanisms used to manage online communities, to manufacture consensus, and ensure that people asking difficult questions are kept in a holding pen.
It's the matrix of modern narrative management. It's fascinating.
It really is.
So to understand how an entire community gets locked in a casino when they literally thought they were in a laboratory, we have to look at how the building was constructed.
Right, we have to go back to the algorithmic boom of 2015.
The Wild West days.
Yeah, that time frame from 2015 to 2017, it represents this period of rapid decentralized distribution.
Major video platforms were tuning their recommendation algorithms to maximize watch time, right?
Exactly, and alternative cosmology content just exploded. It was entirely organic at first.
People were just experimenting, asking questions.
Yeah, questioning institutional science and uploading videos without any centralized curation or, leadership.
But the audit shows this Wild West phase didn't last long at all. The ecosystem was almost instantly forced into what the dossier calls, a dialectical trap.
A dialectical trap. Basically, that forces an organic movement into a false binary choice.
Okay, so how did that work here?
Well, the algorithms and early network liaisons essentially mandated a rule. If you were going to question standard heliocentrism, you had to adopt one highly specific, incredibly fragile alternative model.
The snow globe.
Yes, the azimuthal equidistant 2D disk model.
Right.
The standard caricature, A physical planar disk surrounded by an ice wall, enclosed beneath a solid mechanical glass or metal dome.
With, like, a localized sun moving on a literal track just beneath the ceiling.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to push back here for a second. When we say gatekeepers engineered a trap, are we talking about, like, men in black suits sitting in a boardroom drawing up a fake flat Earth map?
Well, no, and the dossier actually addresses that distinction.
Oh, okay. So is it just the natural result of algorithm greed?
Mm-hmm.
Like opportunists realizing that screaming about a cartoon dome gets millions of views while, boring atmospheric physics just doesn't?
The conclusion in the audit is that functionally, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Right. Whether it is a conscious, centralized conspiracy or just decentralized algorithmic opportunism, the operational mechanism is identical.
Yeah.
The standard model was amplified precisely because of its fragility.
Because defending a giant glass dome is practically impossible.
Exactly. By forcing the community to defend a literal physical dome, the network suppressed any real discussion of complex field dynamics or advanced optics.
Which guarantees mainstream ridicule, right?
Yes, it creates a straw man from the inside. The alternative space becomes this containment zone of easily mocked ideas.
Ensuring nobody takes the underlying skepticism seriously at all.
Right, and if you were a researcher inside that community who realized, the 2D model was flawed.
You ran straight into the enforcement arm of the trap.
Yes, you did.
Which brings us to the year 2016, and an event the audit labels the perimeter schism.
The 2016 perimeter schism was a critical structural event. It was initiated by a content creator known as TigerDan925.
Okay, and he launched a campaign called Flat Earth Liars Exposed, right?
That's the one.
Let me make sure I understand the mechanics of this, for you, the listener. So this creator is initially part of the community, but then pivots to aggressively attacking other researchers.
Specifically, he attacked the people trying to look past the 2D map and explore physical perimeter boundaries.
So how does the audit classify his behavior? Like, what was he actually doing?
TigerDan925 functioned as an early structural operative. His role was to establish an ideological purity test.
A purity test.
Yeah, he wasn't really debating geography. He was establishing a behavioral template.
Meaning, if you stepped out of line, you were punished.
Exactly. Anyone who questioned the rigid 2D dome model was aggressively labeled a turncoat, a compromise, or a controlled asset.
If you are listening, just think about how often you see this in politics or culture wars today. It's exactly like building an ideological electric fence around the pasture.
That's a great way to put it.
You have this massive group of people gathered by the algorithm, and the moment someone says, hey, maybe we shouldn't commit to this physical glass dome, maybe we should study how light behaves over long distances, the early gatekeepers push them right into the electric fence.
And that purity test violation is a mechanism of isolation.
Right.
The aggressive pushback from TigerDan925 and others established this permanent fracture pattern. It took a movement based on unified technical inquiry.
And transformed it into a public spectacle of interpersonal drama.
Exactly. Viewers were forced to choose factions rather than analyze actual data.
So the fence is fully powered. The audience has been handed a flawed model, and if they try to look for a better one, they just get excommunicated.
Yep, they get pushed out.
But once that fence is up, who manages the herd?
That's where the forensic audit breaks down the structural hierarchy of the ecosystem. It details how specific network gatekeepers coordinated to maintain this false binary trap.
And it starts with the shock factors, right? The dossier calls them the absurdist amplifiers.
The absurdist amplifiers, yes. Figures like Eric Dubé, Nathan Thompson, and others who operated on the absolute fringes.
So what was their job?
Their operational role within the containment architecture was basically to poison the well.
How so?
They heavily blended alternative cosmology with extreme lifestyle claims, radical health fads, and sensationalized, really aggressive behavior.
So if a mainstream journalist or just a curious observer looks at the movement, they don't see someone carefully measuring atmospheric refraction.
No, not at all.
They see a guy screaming at a NASA employee in a coffee shop, or someone claiming gravity is a hoax while promoting, like, a fringe diet.
Right, which guarantees instant repulsion from the general public.
Wow. Okay.
But the absurdist amplifiers serve a secondary function too. It's the double bluff of controlled opposition.
Oh, explain that.
When someone like Eric Dubé turns his crosshairs inward and calls other creators shills, it creates the illusion of a fiercely independent, rebellious movement.
In reality.
In reality, it just generates more drama, safeguarding the overarching containment framework by keeping everyone completely distracted.
But a shock jock can only hold an audience's attention for so long. You can't monetize a one-off viral stunt forever. You need retention.
You need people logging in every single day.
Exactly. So how do the gatekeepers maintain that daily engagement?
They built the endless loop panel operators.
Endless loop, right.
We are looking at streamers like Nathan Oakley, the Globebusters, and these massive debate hubs that streamed for hours on end every single day.
This transition in the audit is staggering to me. It outlines the literal gamification of physics.
Gamification is the perfect word.
These operators took an audience that originally wanted to do physical research and funneled them into daily, high-frequency super chat extraction streams.
Yep. Instead of encouraging their audience to go outside with optical instruments and actually take measurements, these panel operators structured their streams around endless, repetitive rhetoric loops.
Just having the same arguments over and over.
Every day, they would host the same interpersonal disputes and debate the same simplified talking points indefinitely.
And the financial mechanism here is just brilliant. While two people are screaming at each other over a rudimentary physics concept on screen, the audience is paying to participate.
Oh, constantly. $5 to insult the guest, $10 to cheer on the host.
Right. The dopamine hit of tribalism completely replaces the lonely, rigorous work of actual scientific observation.
It is the direct conversion of inquiry into real-time capital. The panels extract the revenue.
But to ensure the ecosystem doesn't collapse under its own toxicity, you need a different kind of management for the outside world, don't you?
You need a PR department.
The audit calls them the controlled gatekeepers, highlighting figures like Mark Sargent and Patricia Steer.
Yes, the dossier identifies Mark Sargent as the designated media-friendly spokesperson.
So whenever a mainstream documentary crew, a late-night talk show, or a network news outlet wanted to cover the phenomenon,
They were almost always routed straight to Sargent.
why him specifically?
Because he presented a very specific, non-threatening, heavily simplified version of the movement. He served as the authorized liaison.
Ensuring the mainstream only ever saw the fragile 2D dome model.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Patricia Steer operated what was essentially a central interview hub,
Okay, and what was her structural function?
basically indexing and cataloging incoming independent researchers. She absorbed their energy into the managed network before they could gain any independent traction.
Ah, so they act as the intake valve. You have the absurdists keeping the public away, the panels draining the audience's wallets, the PR faces managing the Netflix documentaries.
But there is still one more layer of monetization:
The closed-loop commerce.
the monetization and app funnels. The audit focuses heavily on individuals like Dave Weiss and Robbie Davidson here.
Their operational directive was converting raw, organic audience traffic into tangible, closed ecosystem commerce, right?
Tangible commerce, yes. Things like the Flat Earth International Conferences, selling thousands of convention tickets,
Convention tickets, merchandise.
and crucially, paid mobile applications. Dave Weiss developed proprietary apps that converted audience engagement into recurring monthly revenue.
So instead of researching on the open web, you are paying a subscription fee to get your daily updates delivered inside a walled garden.
Exactly. You are locking the audience's analysis inside a controlled user interface. It is the ultimate containment.
Looking at this structure, I mean, it seems airtight.
It was very effective.
But reading through the network audit, I noticed a massive anomaly. A group that seemed to completely reject all of this.
Ah, you're talking about the IPS archetype.
Yeah, the dossier highlights a figure named Tim Osman and the Infinite Plane Society.
This is a fascinating operational study in what the dossier terms cerebral containment.
So let's look at Osman. He explicitly called out the monetization schemes. He attacked the app salesmen. He mocked the purity tests and the panel operators.
He was very vocal against them.
He seemed to recognize the casino for exactly what it was.
Mhm.
So my first thought was, does someone actually break out of the containment funnel?
It is highly counterintuitive. Osman was systematically isolated by the primary gatekeepers because he rejected the rigid 2D dogma and exposed the lower-tier shill.
Right, he was a genuine threat to their revenue streams.
However, the forensic verdict in the dossier is that he actually represented a secondary containment layer.
Wait, how do you contain an audience by telling them the truth about the gatekeepers?
By creating a buffer zone built entirely on media deconstruction.
A buffer zone.
Yeah, the Infinite Plane Society functioned as an analysis-only trap. They utilized a concept they called auto-hoaxism.
Which means treating everything in the media as a synthetic generated event.
Precisely. Osman taught his audience to intensely analyze how events, narratives, and space agencies synthetically generate content on screens.
But wait, that sounds like critical thinking to me. That sounds like teaching people media literacy. Which is a good thing.
It mimics critical thinking, but it lacks the empirical component required for physical science.
Oh, I see.
True independent research in this field requires optical instrumentation, thermal refraction logging, and mathematical data collection outdoors.
Right, getting off the computer.
Exactly. Osman kept his audience perpetually focused on screens, critiquing other creators, and deconstructing digital illusions.
Ah, okay. Instead of teaching them to build a laser gyroscope or map a thermal boundary, he taught them to be really good at pausing YouTube videos to look for pixel glitches.
He kept them looking sideways instead of looking outward. By introducing complex psychological framing that diluted hard scientific data, the network kept that specific audience entirely in an intellectual holding pen.
Because if you are endlessly debating the synthetic nature of digital culture,
You never actually organize an expedition to measure a physical geographic boundary.
it's a cerebral containment funnel. Even the rebellion against the casino is just a VIP room inside the casino.
It is a highly sophisticated method of capturing the highly intellectual skeptics who were just too smart to fall for the super chat shouting matches or the physical glass dome.
That is wild. This raises the ultimate question for me, though.
Which is,
If all of these layers, the shock jocks, the debate farmers, the PR faces, and the media critics, if they're all just different operational mechanisms of a containment trap, what was the actual physical data they were terrified of? What were they trying to suppress?
now we transition from the network architecture to the empirical data itself. We must look at the suppressed science and the independent optics.
Right, let's talk about the people who bypassed the drama and actually tried to do the math.
The individuals explicitly categorized by this dossier as suppressed, or operating entirely outside the managed hubs.
We are talking about researchers like Antonio Subirats, Taboo Conspiracy, Matt Boylan, Keon, and Martin Limke.
These individuals ignored the app funnels and the panel loops entirely. They focused on historical forensics, advanced optical physics, and empirical field data.
And the two most significant technical case studies detailed in the dossier belong to Antonio Subirats and Bob Knodel, right?
Yes, those two are paramount.
Let's dive deep into Subirats first. The dossier highlights his work on atmospheric lensing and the rendered framework.
It's a completely different approach.
Because earlier, we established that the gatekeepers forced the community to defend a cartoonish physical glass dome. Subirats steps completely outside of that and says, you don't need a physical dome to explain the sky.
He brought classical optical physics into a space that had just been starved of it.
How so?
Subirats proposed that what we observe as the sun is not a rigid physical sphere traveling on a mechanical track beneath a metal ceiling.
Right.
Instead, he argued that the observed sun is a localized optical convergence spot.
I was reading his notes on this, and it sounded to me like he's treating the atmosphere less like empty space and more like a giant, dense fiber optic cable. Is that the right way to visualize it?
That is actually an excellent analogy. Think of electromagnetic field lines intersecting through layers of atmospheric density, creating a rendered focal point.
Like light concentrating through a lens to form a brilliantly bright spot.
Precisely.
But okay, if there is no physical dome blocking the light, how do you explain a sunset or a boundary of darkness? Why doesn't the light just travel infinitely across the flat plane?
Because Subirats argued that long-distance observations across planetary boundaries cannot assume straight-line light vectors.
They don't travel in a straight line.
No. This standard scientific model, and ironically the Gatekeepers 2D model, both often assume light travels in perfectly straight lines through the air.
Which it doesn't.
Right. Subirats pointed to the Rayleigh criterion and atmospheric extinction to prove it doesn't.
The Rayleigh criterion. The dossier is a massive equation for this, but let's try to translate that math into physical reality for you, the listener. What does it actually mean for a human eye or a camera?
Well, the Rayleigh criterion establishes the angular resolution limit of an optical system.
So it's, think of it like a biological pixel limit.
Exactly. Your eye, or a camera lens, has a physical constraint on the smallest detail it can resolve.
Right.
As an object, like a ship, recedes toward the horizon, its angular size shrinks.
It gets physically smaller in your field of view.
Right, and eventually its angular size falls below the resolution threshold of your optical system. The visual data simply becomes too small for your lens to process.
So it doesn't vanish because it dropped over in a physical geometric curve.
According to this model, no. It merges into the atmospheric horizon line because your optics cannot resolve the separation between the object and the background anymore.
Wow. And this resolution limit is heavily compounded by the atmosphere itself. Right. Because the air isn't a vacuum.
This is where atmospheric extinction comes in. Subirats focused on light absorption over vast atmospheric path lengths.
What happens over those long distances?
If you place an observer at an extreme geographic boundary, looking inward over thousands of miles of cold, dense atmosphere, the path length the light has to travel increases exponentially.
The light has to punch through thousands of miles of thick, freezing air, moisture, and particulate matter.
And classical physics dictates that light loses energy as it travels through a medium.
Naturally.
Atmospheric extinction simply absorbs the remaining light rays. This absorption produces a localized dark boundary.
The circumpolar midnight.
Exactly. A boundary of darkness is created simply because the light runs out of energy to penetrate the sheer density of the atmospheric path length.
Which explains a localized D-night cycle without requiring a physical 2D dome edge or a mechanical sun.
It's a mathematically grounded alternative. And Subbaratz went even further. He documented thermal inversions.
Oh, this part was fascinating.
When you have freezing cold air sitting directly above a warmer body of water, or vice versa, the air acts like a physical lens.
Optical physicists refer to this as a superior mirage effect, right? Driven by a steep thermal density gradient.
Yes. Cold, dense air bends light rays downward toward the denser medium.
And this downward bending actually lifts the optical horizon, compressing and distorting the visual data.
Which is critical when setting up an experiment. So if someone is trying to do an unshielded sightline test over a lake, assuming the light is traveling in a straight line to prove curvature.
They are fundamentally ignoring the fact that the thermal gradient is actively bending the laser or the visual data down into the water.
Exactly.
Okay.
Subbaratz brought heavy, classical, testable optics to the ecosystem. Rayleigh limits, atmospheric extinction, thermal density gradients. It was brilliant, rigorous work.
So how did the gatekeepers react? Did they adopt this vastly superior model?
No, they systematically excluded him.
Of course they did.
The major creator hubs and the panel operators isolated Subbaratz completely. His framework bypassed their dialectical trap.
Because it was grounded in classical physics, it couldn't be easily mocked by mainstream media.
And which meant it couldn't be easily monetized in the daily super chat outrage loops.
They intentionally silenced the actual physics because it ruined the grift.
It threatened the containment architecture entirely.
Which brings us to the second suppressed case study. This might be the most famous and frankly the most tragic event in this entire 10-year audit.
You're referring to Bob Knodel and the Signac field drift.
Bob Knodel's case perfectly illustrates how genuine empirical data is neutralized when it falls outside the managed parameters, doesn't it?
It really does. Knodel was an independent hardware tester who managed to acquire and deploy a high-precision $20,000 Sagnac effect ring laser gyroscope.
I mean, a military-grade piece of hardware? This is not a hobbyist with a spirit level. This is serious optical equipment designed for aerospace navigation.
Yes, very serious equipment.
What's his objective?
He intended to measure rotational drift against terrestrial coordinates.
Okay.
And upon running the gyroscope, he recorded a consistent, highly precise rotational drift of exactly 15 degrees per hour.
Okay, I need to pause here because 15 degrees per hour multiplied by 24 hours is 360 degrees.
Right.
It mathematically aligns perfectly with the rotation of the Earth in the standard heliocentric model.
It does.
So the mainstream media and even the internal gatekeepers immediately pointed at him and said, aha, you just proved the Earth is a spinning globe with your own machine.
But Knodel argued that isn't what the machine was measuring at all.
Right. So what was his interpretation?
Knodel hypothesized that the ring laser gyroscope was not measuring the mechanical, physical rotation of the Earth beneath it. He interpreted his data through the lens of classical field physics.
By citing historical experiments, right?
Yes, citing the historical 1913 Georgia Sagnac experiment and the 1925 Michael Singale experiment.
Okay, we need to spend some real time on this. To understand why Knodel was suppressed, we have to understand what he was actually saying.
Absolutely.
Break down those historical experiments for us. What is the Sagnac effect?
Well, we have to step back into the physics debates of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Before relativity became the dominant paradigm, physics relied on the concept of the luminiferous ether.
The ether, right.
A celestial electromagnetic medium that permeates all of space through which light waves travel.
Like sound needing air to travel, light needed the ether.
Precisely. So in 1913, George Sagnac designed an experiment to detect this ether.
How do you do it?
He placed a light source and mirrors on a rotating turntable. He split a beam of light, sending one beam clockwise around the table and the other counterclockwise before recombining them at a detector.
I want to use a metaphor here for the listener. It's like running on a moving walkway at an airport.
Okay, go on.
If I run in the same direction the walkway is moving, I reach the end much faster. But if I turn around and run against the walkway, it takes me much longer to reach the starting point, even though I'm running at the same speed.
That is exactly how the Sagnac effect operates. When the turntable rotates, the light beam traveling in the direction of the rotation takes slightly longer to complete the circuit because the detector is moving away from it.
And the beam traveling against the rotation completes the circuit faster because the detector is moving toward it.
Right. And when those two light beams recombine, because one arrived slightly later than the other, their waves are out of sync.
They create what is called an interference fringe.
A phase shift.
Right, a phase shift.
Sagnac successfully measured this phase shift, demonstrating that the speed of light was affected by the rotation of the platform relative to the ether medium.
And then what happened in 1925?
Michelson and Gale built a massive rectangular pipeline in Illinois, evacuated the air, and ran a similar light-splitting experiment to measure the 15-degree-per-hour rotation of the Earth.
And they also successfully recorded the fringe shift.
It did.
So mainstream physics says Michelson-Gale proved the physical Earth is spinning in a stationary ether or space.
That is the standard interpretation.
But Nodal comes along with his modern ring laser gyroscope, which is essentially a miniaturized fiber optic version of that Michelson-Gale pipeline, and he records the same 15-degree drift.
Yes, but his interpretation flips the script entirely.
How?
Nodal argued a principle of relativity that is often ignored. Relative motion is indistinguishable without an external reference frame.
Meaning?
The 15-degree phase shift simply proves relative rotational motion between the optical sensor and the ether field.
He is saying the gyroscope isn't feeling the ground spinning beneath its feet, it's feeling the electromagnetic ether field spinning over its head.
Exactly. He argued for a stationary terrestrial substrate with a rotating celestial electromagnetic field above it.
Wow.
Because the gyroscope cannot mathematically distinguish between the sensor rotating in a stationary field or a rotating field washing over a stationary sensor.
That is a staggering paradigm shift. He is saying the math is correct, the 15 degrees per hour is real, but the mechanical cause is the sky moving, not the ground.
It is a completely valid alternative interpretation grounded in legacy classical physics. However,
There's always a however.
to rigorously test this hypothesis, you have to engage in incredibly complex field mechanics.
Like what?
You have to introduce zero-Gauss isolation chambers to shield the gyroscope from the external electromagnetic field to see if blocking the field stops the recorded drift.
You have to do real, hard science.
Yes.
And as we've established, the panel operators and the PR gatekeepers don't want to talk about zero-Gauss isolation chambers or the 1913 Sagnac experiment.
No, they want to talk about ice walls because it generates super chats.
Exactly. Which leads directly to how Bob Nodal was intercepted and neutralized.
It brings us into the chronological timeline of the audit, the engineered media traps.
Right, because if you have independent researchers generating highly complex data like Subarats, mapping atmospheric extinction, and Nodal interpreting Sagnac drift, how did the gatekeepers neutralize that threat to their containment funnel?
They engineer a failure.
A deliberate failure.
In 2018, the network executed a massive operation that the dossier labels the 2018 Unshielded Test Trap.
This culminated in the release of a highly publicized mainstream documentary called Behind the Curve, right?
Yes, this is a textbook example of media coordination and the deliberate omission of scientific controls.
Tell us what happened.
The documentary featured a creator named Geran Campanella who ran a channel called Geranism attempting a canal laser test.
The premise of the test was simple, right? Set up a high-powered laser over a long stretch of water and place a target at a specific distance.
Right. If the Earth is flat, the laser hits the target at the exact same height. If the Earth curves, the curvature of the water will block the laser.
But as we just spent 20 minutes discussing with Antonio Subarat's optical model, you cannot run an unshielded light test over cold water.
It's optically invalid. Campanella performed the test completely devoid of thermal refraction controls.
He ignored the thermal density gradient entirely.
When you run a laser over miles of water, the cold, dense air immediately above the surface acts as a lens, bending the light ray downward.
Because he didn't shield the experiment or account for the superior mirage effect, the laser bent downward, and it didn't hit the target where he expected.
And that precise moment of failure was captured on film.
It was broadcast to millions of people. as an outright definitive failure of the flat Earth hypothesis.
When scientifically it was merely a failure to account for basic atmospheric lensing.
And it was a bloodbath for Bob Knodel, too, because he was heavily featured in that same documentary.
He was. The production crew spent hours filming Nodal discussing his $20,000 gyroscope.
But during the post-production editing process,
The media liaisons completely excised all of his technical nuance.
they cut out every single mention of the 1913 Sagnac experiment, the Michelson-Gale history, the ether field, and the need for zero Gauss electromagnetic shielding.
They reduced hours of classical field physics into a 10-second clip of a man looking at a screen, reading a 15-degree drift, and looking defeated. It's just absolutely brutal.
They broadcast raw readouts completely stripped of their theoretical context, presenting it as an instant, self-inflicted debunk.
This is what the dossier calls the fourth stage of the gatekeeping mechanism, right? The engineered concession funnel.
The engineered concession funnel. It is a devastating psychological weapon.
How does it function?
The network gatekeepers guide prominent community figures into high-stakes, unshielded public experiments that are structurally designed from the ground up to fail on camera.
Because the goal isn't just to prove the community wrong mathematically.
No, the goal is to break their spirit on a global streaming platform so millions of people can laugh at them.
It manufactures massive ecosystem-wide demoralization.
And this tactic did not stop in 2018. It was merely the prototype,
Right, the engineered concession funnel escalated over the next several years.
culminating in what the forensic audit labels the final experiment.
The year 2024, the Union Glacier expedition. This is the absolute crescendo of the 10-year audit. The logistical setup for this operation was immense. A Christian pastor named Will Duffy crowdfunded over $100,000 to organize an expedition to Antarctica.
The cost was approximately $35,000 per seat, wasn't it?
Yes, very expensive.
And he brings along prominent debaters from the alternative cosmology space. Specifically, Joran Campanella, the same man who failed the unshielded laser test in 2018, and a high-profile streamer named Austin Whitsitt.
The stated objective of this expedition was to settle the debate by answering a single binary question.
Which was,
Is there a continuous 24-hour sun in Antarctica during the southern summer?
if the sun visibly loops the sky for 24 hours without setting, the simplified 2D flat Earth model, the standard model the gatekeepers mandated, is physically geometrically impossible.
Exactly. So they pack their bags, they fly down to Antarctica, and they point cameras at the sky.
But the forensic dossier highlights a massive, fatal flaw engineered directly into the core logistics of this expedition, a geographic disconnect. Where exactly did they go?
They flew to the Union Glacier camp. The exact coordinates are 79 degrees, 46 minutes south, 83 degrees, 15 minutes west.
79 degrees south. For you, the listener, what is the geographical significance of that specific location on the Antarctic landmass?
The significance is that it is located deep within the interior of the continent. It is roughly 600 miles inland from the South Pole.
600 miles inland.
Yes. This specific region is accessed via tightly controlled commercial flight corridors operated by a private logistics company called Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions, or ALE.
Right. Because of the Antarctic Treaty and severe operational restrictions, independent researchers cannot just rent a boat and explore the ice shelf wherever they want.
Exactly. ALE flights depart from Punta Arenas, Chile, and drop tourists and guided expeditions directly into this interior convergence zone.
And that interior placement is the fatal flaw of the experiment, according to the audit.
Yes, it is.
Explain why. Why does standing 600 miles inland invalidate the test?
Because it completely bypasses the independent optical physics we discussed with Antonio Subirats.
Ah, the atmospheric extinction model.
Recall his theory. He argued that the localized dark boundary, the reason the sun appears to set on a flat plane, is created by light extinction at the extreme outer perimeter.
Because thousands of miles of cold, dense atmosphere absorb the light before it can reach the outer edge.
So if you want to rigorously test Subirats' optical extinction boundary, where do you have to be standing?
You must position the observer on the true outer circumpolar ice shelves, the very edge of the coastline looking inward.
Exactly. You need the maximum atmospheric path length between the observer and the light source.
But by flying the debaters on a chartered jet deep into the interior to 79 degrees south, You bypass that boundary completely.
You are placing them inside the convergence zone. You are placing the observer in a geographic location where the light has not yet traveled through enough atmosphere to be extinguished.
You are physically thousands of miles away from the true perimeter where the optical extinction tests actually need to be conducted.
It's completely flawed.
I want to give the listener an analogy. It's like trying to prove your house doesn't have exterior brick walls by standing in the dead center of your living room, looking around and saying, well, I don't see any bricks, so the house must be infinite.
That's spot on. You bypass the boundary. It is literal geographic containment. Furthermore, the dossier emphasizes that the expedition completely omitted any optical diagnostics.
They didn't bring any real equipment, did they?
No.
So,
They did not map the atmospheric thermal profiles. They did not utilize spectroscopy to measure path-length light extinction or energy loss.
nothing to measure polarization either.
They did not log the polarization of the light over the 360-degree cycles. They simply set up basic time-lapse cameras, stood in the interior of the continent, and looked at the sky.
And what was the result of the Union Glacier expedition?
The cameras recorded 4 continuous days of a non-setting, looping sun from the interior camp.
And the trap snapped shut.
Yes. Faced with the visual data of a 24-hour sun, and completely unequipped to mathematically argue the atmospheric extinction dynamics of their location.
The debaters folded.
Charon Campanella conceded live on stream. He looked into the camera, admitted defeat, and acknowledged the 24-hour sun as proof that their model was dead.
The psychological impact of that concession must have been a nuclear bomb for that community.
It was absolute devastation. The network liaisons and the platform algorithms instantly leveraged this concession footage to enforce ultimate narrative closure.
They weaponized an observation taken from the interior polar region to definitively shatter the community's trust.
Completely bypassing the outer edge atmospheric lensing controls that independent researchers like SuperRats have been begging to test for years.
They crowdfunded $100,000 to execute the perfect engineered concession on live television. And that leads us to the aftermath, which the dossier describes covering the years 2025 and 2026.
The audit labels this final phase ecosystem stagnation and managed dissolution.
The audience, stripped of their leadership and highly demoralized by the Union Glacier failure, remained locked in permanent, toxic debate loops.
They were too fractured and exhausted to ever coordinate a unified technical inquiry again.
The casino broke them.
The containment architecture succeeded flawlessly. The decentralized threat of genuine, physical, independent research was entirely neutralized.
Replaced by a permanent, self-policing containment zone. Okay, I want to pull back from the ice of Antarctica for a moment and look at this massive 10-year timeline as a whole.
It's important to look at the big picture.
Because we promised at the beginning of this deep dive that this wasn't just about the shape of the Earth. We promised this was about narrative control. So what does this audit mean for you, the listener? How do we apply these mechanisms to the rest of the internet?
The dossier concludes with specific operational directives. It provides strategies for bypassing these dialectical traps in future independent research.
Regardless of what field you're studying, what topic you're debating, right?
Exactly.
Let's go through them. Because after reading how efficiently this ecosystem was dismantled, these sound like necessary rules for surviving the digital age.
The primary directive is differential parameter isolation.
Break that down into daily application for us.
It means you must evaluate physical phenomena or any specific political or social claim individually, strictly on its own merits.
Rather than defending a prepackaged holistic model.
Right. Don't let someone force you into defending a fragile 2D snow globe just because you want to study atmospheric light refraction.
Test one variable at a time. Isolate the parameter. Don't buy the whole ideological bundle just to get access to one idea.
Exactly. If you accept the binary choice, you have already lost.
What's the next directive?
The second directive is mandatory environmental diagnostics.
In physics, this meant Bob Nodal needing to log thermal inversion profiles or insisting on electromagnetic shielding for his gyroscope. But in a broader sense, what does environmental diagnostics mean for you, the listener?
It means ruthlessly checking the context of the data you are being presented. Who is providing the data? What variables have they omitted?
If someone shows you a 10-second clip of a failing laser test, what thermal gradients did they edit out?
If someone shows you a gyroscope readout, did they cut the 3 hours of classical field physics explanation that accompanied it? You must diagnose the environment surrounding the information.
That makes perfect sense. And the final directive.
Decentralized archival. This is vital for any community. You must maintain open source, non-volatile repositories for your raw data, your methodologies, and your analyses.
Because if you rely entirely on centralized video platforms, algorithm-driven hubs, or super chat panels to host your research, you are subject to their rules.
You are subject to their purity tests, their financial extraction, and their containment funnels.
You do not own your research if it is housed inside their casino. You must own your data outside of the managed funnels.
It is the only way to protect inquiry.
Reading through this 10-year dossier, looking at the sheer logistical, financial, and psychological effort it took to corral, fracture, and monetize this one specific online movement, it is absolutely breathtaking.
It really is a marvel of engineering in a dark way.
The gatekeepers didn't just win a debate. They didn't just present better data. They engineered an entire social reality to ensure the debate ended exactly how and when they wanted it to, all while extracting maximum profit from the participants.
It is a profound, terrifying study in structural narrative control. They took organic human curiosity, hijacked it, and weaponized it into a self-defeating loop.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We've just spent the last hour dissecting how a massive, decentralized online movement could be so efficiently managed, fractured, and monetized using false binaries, algorithmic amplification, and engineered failure.
So the question becomes,
How many of the other online debates you engage in daily, from politics to the economy to the latest culture war, are actually just four-stage dialectical traps quietly designed to keep you inside the funnel?
it forces you to evaluate your own digital footprint, doesn't it? Are you actually participating in a debate, or are you just generating revenue a holding pen?
Think about that the next time you feel the urge to argue with a stranger on a screen. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay rigorous, and we'll see you next time.